Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman. We hope you will enjoy this program. We're going to cover a variety of topics. We get a chance to talk to Bill Vogel, Ryan Hexter, and Doug Cowan, who are some Grosse Pointe South sailors who've had a chance to go to state championships and nationals. They're in the process of leaving tomorrow morning for some international and North American competition on 420s. And Billy's going to talk a little bit about his laser experience, and Ryan and Doug are going to talk about their experience about being in a boat. I think you find it to be pretty enjoyable. We talk a little bit about junior sailing and maybe how kids look at it differently than maybe we do as adults. Second part of the show is going to take, I think, an interesting twist. We've always heard about lightning and boats and people who get struck by lightning, but how many of us really know any of those circumstances? So we'll get a chance to talk to DYRA Commodore and Bayview member Tim Prophit. We sat with Tim just before they left for Chicago on Sunday and kind of went through he got hit by lightning a couple of weeks ago, lost some instruments, went through a variety of discussions, and Tim kind of explained his process of making sure the boat was safe. When the boat gets hit a couple of weeks before a major race, you want to make sure it's up to snuff. And Tim's going to give you some pretty good insight from that standpoint. I wanted to also mention one other thing. Bots on the move. Our Mark Set bot guys, just past week, some of the bots from Crescent from the area are headed over to Tokyo for the Olympics. I wanted to give those guys a shout because I think that's kind of a cool deal. Bots traveled to Long Beach for another Olympic class regatta this past week. I'm reading this, so I just want to make sure I don't get this wrong. The M32 class has kept their bot fleet busy for the summer with regattas in Newport. Solar-powered boats participating in last week's Monaco Challenge once again rounded the fleets for Markset bots, and they're being used all over the country. So I think it's a testament to Markset bot and what a good job they're doing. So stay tuned for the trio of young men from Grosse Pointe South, and we'll be back in a second. Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We're lucky enough to have with us today three members of the Grosse Pointe South sailing team who have had quite a ride here over the last 3 or 4 months. And I want to introduce Billy Vogel, Ryan Hexter, and Doug Cowan. Guys, first of all, tell me what grades you're in and how long you've been sailing. Billy, we'll start with you.
All righty. So I just graduated from South. I was a senior this past year, and I was one of the 2 varsity captains. And I've been sailing since I was about 8 or 9 years old. And so I've been on Lake St. Clair for quite a while.
You remember Crescent, am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, I sail out of Crescent.
Ryan?
Well, I just graduated. I've been sailing for about since I was 12, right when we moved here. And I was also one of the 2 captains on the South team.
Okay. And Doug?
I'm going to be a senior next year. I've been sailing since I was 7, so almost 7 full years. And yeah.
Okay. Your guys obviously go to South. Ryan, you and Doug sail 420s together.
Yep.
And Bill, you're a pretty highly ranked laser sailor.
Correct. Yeah.
So let me go backwards. Let's talk about the high school season. You guys won the states. There are about how many high school teams in the state of Michigan sail racing?
Probably 20.
Okay.
Maybe a few more, maybe a few less, something like that.
Okay. Was it a good spring? Was it cold? Let's talk a little bit about the season.
So we actually, when we started off in the beginning of April, the weather was actually beautiful. I remember like there was quite a few days where it was up in the 50s and 60s early on, and then I'd say probably towards the end of April is actually when we got some snow when we were out there on the water. But we had a lot of good practices, a lot of good regattas. Yeah.
Why isn't sail racing for high school done in the fall where it's warmer? I would think that would be a little bit like golf, right?
We do both.
We do both, yeah.
Okay. But it's yet your competitive season though is spring, am I correct?
They're
Yeah.
both pretty equal. So the spring
Well,
we do is like the nationals events are in the spring. So that's where we spend a lot of our time practicing for. But like the state championship is in the fall. So we also focus pretty hard on the fall events.
Okay, now
Yeah.
there's laser sailing for high school, or there is just 420 sailing for high school, like there is for college.
There is some laser sailing for high school as well.
Okay.
That's mainly in the fall.
All right. So walk us through. You won a state championship. Where was it held?
we didn't win this
We
year.
won 2 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We got second this year behind
Okay.
Novi.
Novi beat you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you still got to nationals. You did better at nationals than Novi. Am I correct?
Well,
Well,
we
yeah.
qualified for team race nationals.
And
Okay.
they didn't nationals.
They didn't have a third driver.
Okay.
Well,
So
yeah.
talk. Where was the championship held? The state championship.
The one where we got second this year.
Yeah.
That was here at the yacht club.
Okay. And we're referring to the picture behind me, which is
Yeah.
Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. Okay. Let's go. I guess talk to a little bit about nationals. You qualified. Now are there not two races to qualify out of states to go to nationals?
Well, there's the pre-qualifier, which is the state of Michigan. So you race all the other teams in the state, and I believe it's the top four go to or is it 4 or 2? I think it's 4. Go to the qualifier, which is all of MISA, which is all the Midwest schools, and they have about 12 teams there. And that this year that was over in Minnesota. It was in Minnesota. Yep. And so then the top 2 teams there go off to nationals, which was in Miami this year.
Nice to go to warm weather. Doug,
Yeah, it was awesome.
what was the weather like? Nice and
Well, it was way better than wearing dry suits. We didn't have to wear anything. It was warm, windy. The wind was way better there than it is here.
all right. So you guys are at nationals. You're at nice warm weather in Florida. Where do we fit Michigan? Where does Michigan fit in relationship to the national scene?
Not great.
Yeah, not great at all.
The Midwest is not good compared to the southern teams and California teams and all of them.
How do we get better? What is it that we have to be better at? Just more time in the boat because it's warm weather. So
Both the guys that were competing for the top place were from the Virgin Islands and then from Miami, and they sail year round. So
Right.
they get to sail for, they're sailing all throughout the winter when we're, looking at a lake full of ice, and then they also, a lot of those schools do a lot recruiting, and they recruit some of the kids who've, gone and won the world championship in opties and stuff. So
a little bit like guys that, ice hockey players come from Michigan, but golfers come from, Mississippi. And one of those approaches. Was it when you go to a nationals? Is it intimidating? I mean, what's your thoughts walking in? You're happy to be there, but do you realize you can compete, or is it just one of those a building block experience?
Well, everyone had to qualify for it, so you're all similar skill level, but also kind of intimidating.
Is there any difference between sailing in the ocean and there is in the lake? Do you have to get used to that?
Not really, other than getting salt in your face, but other than that, it's not too different.
You'd rather stay in the freshwater, Doug?
Sorry, say it
You'd
again.
rather stay in the freshwater?
Yeah, I like freshwater because then it doesn't get all your gear all salty and gross, and yeah.
Ryan, what was the best part of nationals for you?
Well, our first race, we won our first race, and then at that point, after the first race, we were tied for first. So that was pretty awesome. And then it went downhill from there. We were close in a lot of the races, but could never finish above the other teams.
Is it knowledge, or again, you go back to the same question, I guess, it's just time in the boat? Because
I think it's coaching, time in the boat. I mean, they can sail year round with some of the most highly ranked coaches, or however you want to refer to them as. And yeah, they've just got a
There's
bigger.
a lot of competition too. They're always they sail against a lot of, like in the Midwest, there's not that much competition, but they're all really good and they're all getting better, like pushing themselves to get better.
And they get to sail with some of the, they're sailing with these other kids that were also there at nationals.
Right.
And when we team race, a lot of times here we'll end up not using and employing all the team race strategies that you have to employ here. So I feel like there were some situations where we didn't get to really use a lot of the stuff that we know how to use, but haven't used it yet. And so we were, some of the plays were a little bit iffy, where if we had, practiced them for a couple weeks using those strategies, we probably would have been able to execute a little bit better.
High school sailing is not under the MHSAA's banner, which is the organization that runs all high school sports. You guys have the chance to go to nationals. For whatever reason, the states decided that they don't want kids being able to compete nationally because it's a burden on people and programs who don't have, say, the resources that other programs may have. My question is to you guys, the experience of nationals make you better sailors, and that experience doesn't hurt the classroom. You're not gone for months. You're gone for, I'm sure, days. But you think if kids in other sports had a chance to compete at a nationals, it would enhance their ability to at a different level?
Yeah, it gives you better competition and pushes you to get better.
You guys agree with that same thing?
Yeah, I mean, by competing against people that are better than you, you're only going to learn from the experience. So, sailing, like we were just, Dougie and I were just at a regatta, and we saw a kid doing something that looked like it might be fast. We tried it. It worked. And so you learn from people that you sail against and compete against. And yeah.
You mentioned that Novi was the state champion. You guys were the runners up. I'm assuming they practice at Pontiac.
They don't practice at all.
They don't practice at all. Okay.
No.
They
It's
must be
just-
really good then, right?
Yeah, they're good. They're good.
Well, here's my question. If you have a Pontiac and on a lake versus Lake St. Clair, well, Lake St. Clair is not the Great Lakes. It's certainly bigger than any inland lake. Is there any difference in process with a smaller lake and a larger lake?
Definitely, yeah. On the bigger lake here, you'll get a lot more chop, you'll get a lot more waves, and the wind is generally more consistent. When you go to those inland lakes, which a lot of high school sailing is on inland lakes, it's very shifty almost all the time, and it's very flat. And so whoever's winning the race is whoever is, able to tell, this side of the course looks like the puffs are going to be better there, and it's also very shifty. And whoever can play the shifts the best is usually who ends up winning on the inland lakes.
How much time do you guys spend in boats in a week?
Oh,
A
God.
long time.
Yeah, a lot.
For high school practice Monday through Thursday from 3:45 to like 6:30.
I always see boats going out of our club, in off hours, and I think of kids playing, backyard basketball or Doug, pond hockey. I know, Doug, you're a goaltender, so play different kinds of sports. Weather plays a part of that, but does sailing and the guys, the numbers that did you guys, and I'll call it sandlot for lack of a better term, you guys get out as much you think as other sports and other athletes in their sport?
Probably more.
Yeah, a lot more.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we come from high school. You had a great national. And I just had one quick question. Doug, you and Ryan had, if I'm not mistaken, you guys had a protest with a compass. Was that at the nationals?
No. That wasn't for high school. That was recently. High school.
Let me come back to that. So high school sailing. Now you guys obviously have had, the summer has started. Talk a little bit about this summer and what you guys have done, because I know that tomorrow you're headed for. Talk a little bit about where you're headed tomorrow and sort of what the buildup has been.
Tomorrow we're basically doing the circuit, which is just a bunch of different. Like we're going out to the East Coast tomorrow, going to Rochester, New York for
The North Americans.
the North Americans.
420s.
Yep.
Yep.
For the North Americans.
Okay. Bill, are you headed out of town as well?
Not this week. No. So my biggest event that I sailed was like 3 weeks ago, and that was the Laser Nationals. That was down in Norfolk, Virginia. So I was down there for about a week. I practiced for a couple days leading up to the event, and then there was a 3-day regatta, and it was a great event. That was my biggest event of the summer. And then the other big event that I'm doing this summer is we're hosting the Laser No Coast Regatta over at Crescent again this year.
Billy, you and Ryan are both graduated here in the last 6-7 weeks. And any college opportunities? Are you guys going to go to college and sail?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm going to College of Charleston, and
Okay.
I'm going to try out for the dinghy team, and hopefully I'm on the dinghy team. If not, I'll do the offshore.
Okay. Bill?
I'm going to University of Michigan, and I plan on joining their sailing team as well.
Are there scholarships available for sailing?
No.
So it's a walk-on sport like some of the other non-revenue type sports, unlike football and basketball.
Yeah.
I have kids all the time telling me about how the money they're going to get for lacrosse, and they give out annually about $400 or $500 per athlete, and that doesn't cover the books. So it's you obviously sail for the love of sailing. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yeah.
Bill, are you and Ryan, either one of you guys, involved in other sports? Because I know Doug plays hockey.
I did cross country all 4 years of high school.
Does it help to be a multiple sport athlete versus being a single sport athlete?
Yep.
Why?
I love the community and the running world and got along with everybody. So I did it for all 4 years. It was a great thing to do.
Okay. Now, let me get into just real quick, Bill. I'm going to talk to Ryan and Doug about, being teammates. Being in a 420 is a small boat. You guys have sailed together for a long time. Tell me who the skipper is and who the crew is. And does that change back and forth? And what does it take to be a good sailing crew on a 420?
Well, I'm the skipper. Ryan's the crew. It stays the same the whole time. I've always been the skipper. He's always been the crew.
Why?
Sorry.
Why?
Oh, I don't know. That's just how it's always been. I've always been the driver. Ryan's always been the crew. I don't know. It started in high school.
Okay.
High school, I think maybe my sophomore or maybe my freshman year even. Ryan started crewing for me, and then it just stuck.
Okay.
And to be a good, it takes a lot to be a good crew. The crew is basically telling you everything that's happening outside of the boat, and the driver is just focused on their own boat, making the boat go fast, and he's basically telling you what to do.
On a big boat, a helmsman is the boss. Is that also true, Ryan, on a small boat?
Well, we run everything by each other. I was a driver before I sailed with Dougie. Sailing with Dougie was my first time crewing. And so I know both sides, like what he wants, what he wants to hear. And we kind of come to the same conclusion on a lot of things. And it's just the teamwork in the boat. We can generally read each other's minds, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, so it's not one person's the boss. Usually I'll mess around with him and tell him, well, you have the tiller, so you can do whatever you want. But we usually agree on everything.
I asked the question because I would think it would either break a friendship or make a friendship stronger because of the competition and the opportunities. Because you're obviously competing under, competitive circumstances, and that changes the dynamic if you were just, friends from, class or in school or something, neighbors or something. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What makes you two guys good at what you do?
Well, we've been doing it for a while, so it's kind of like, I don't really know. We're just kind of used to it.
Yeah.
Your dad's go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
It's the chemistry in the boat. We get along with each other, and we put that to good use.
I got to ask, Doug, your dad's a junior sailing director. Ryan, your dad's involved in racing. You have stage parents, or they're supportive, obviously, but is there lots of tips, or is it just they let you go and enjoy yourself?
Yeah, both of my parents are big into sailing. They've sailed all their lives. My first time on a sailboat when I was like 9 days old. My dad, he gives a lot of tips because we're basically following his same path.
Okay. Ryan?
Well, we moved here. My parents didn't really, or they aren't sailors. My dad over the years has gotten really into it. He bought Navy rib to chase us around. And so he's always at every regatta with that, trying to give us tips, sometimes good, sometimes not so much. But he's really starting to get into it and understand the sport.
Bill, I'll ask you the same question before we talk about 420s. Your dad's runs one of the largest laser races at Crescent in the summer. And did Dad sail, or is it something you guys picked up?
So he sailed a little bit when he was in college. He got on some big boats, but he mainly started to pick it up when we got into junior sailing. And when we got into junior sailing, he immediately started getting involved, and he ended up, buying his own big rib, which is, he has one of the biggest ones on the lake. And he's right now working on being a certified, nationally certified PRO.
Yep.
He's on that class right now. So he loves running races. He loves organizing stuff, and he's just doing a great job at it. So
what's it take to be a good 420 sailor at your level, Bill?
Okay. I think it really just takes a lot of practice. I mean, at the end of the day, time in the boat is key. I think focusing on just, in high school and in the summer, I think getting, sailing with, I think being consistent with your crew, sailing with the same person like Dougie and Ryan, they sail together a lot. And that's really what I think allows them to succeed in their races.
In some sports, obviously physical gifts. If you're 7 foot if you're 7 foot, you're going to be better at basketball than if you're 5'8". In boats like the 420, Doug, you and Ryan, I mean, weight's a very specific factor. I know my weight, I'm equal to one crew guy. I could be one person all by myself on a 420 because I weigh the same as the two of you guys put together. The max weight on a 420 is what? To be efficient.
Well, I think me and Ryan, oh God, I think you don't want to be the two of you don't want to be more than 350.
Right.
Right. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I guess my point to it is that sailors, small boat sailors, competitive small boat sailors, then actually size is a factor. It's like you can't be a guy going to the West Point to be a pilot because you can't get in the cockpit. Is that
sometimes your weight helps you a lot, and sometimes it hurts you a lot. Because if you're really heavy and there's no wind, you'll go slower than everyone. And if you're heavy and it's heavy wind and you're tall, like if Ryan's tall out on the trapeze, there's way more leverage and way more weight keeping us flat.
Okay. In just reference to that question, this is all to all three of you. Do you ever note? Have you ever watched somebody that you just knew was going to be gifted at sailing because whatever the reason, they just had it, they had the touch? Is that something
you can kind of tell?
What's that?
You can kind of tell. I mean, I don't know. They just kind of look like it.
All right.
Usually from an early age, like you can kind of just like look at the Opti fleet, and there's some kids that are just like,
yeah, that's what I mean.
Talented at it.
Like you can watch them sail and you can tell that they're going to be good.
Is it fearlessness or is it academic? In other words, is it sailing to be good at sailing? Is it between the ears, or is it that fearlessness of just going faster and pulling harder on a halyard on a sheet line that because somebody else might not want to go as fast? Is it a combination of those things?
I think that's what everybody's still trying to figure out.
Okay. And maybe the big guys have it at some point because of the experience that comes with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where does junior sailing sit in our lake in relationship to both high school sailing and our national levels? Is it a complement to each other, or is it a build up, a step down? I'm curious.
It's definitely a step down, but it's a good place.
I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just wondering where the competition lies. That's all.
Yeah, no, the competition on the Great Lakes or not the Great Lakes. Some of the Great Lakes are good, like over in Chicago, but like some of the competition in Lake St. Clair is definitely a step down, but it's a good place to learn.
Mm-hmm. And that's what sailing here is, what separates some sailors. Some people make it out to other events and some people stay.
And I think also, I think it's great, leading into high school. I think that you definitely want to, learn your basics on the 420 and sail for, a year or two, or even a couple, even more than that. Before you join high school sailing, it really, allows you to solidify your skills. But once you get to high school sailing, I think you really do see a lot more competition on the high school circuit than you will in junior sailing here.
Just a personal edification question. Should there be a boat between an Opti and a 420 for kids to learn?
I think there should be, because some kids think they're too big for Optis, and they really don't want to sell Optis, but they're also not big enough for a 420. Like, you'll see some kids who just don't look like they should be sailing 420s. There should be like a middle like learner's boat kind of.
Well, touching on that, I do think that, I mean, I agree with Dougie, but I also do think that the new or the ILCA4, the 4.7 size sail, which is the smallest sail for the laser, that fleet has been growing at a very rapid rate. We're going to a lot of regattas where the fleet, I mean, at nationals, there was over 60 of these 4.7 fleets, whereas 5-6 years ago, you'd maybe get 10. And that fleet is growing a lot. And it's a lot of kids who just came out of Optis, or, maybe not quite the size for a 420 yet, but they're a little too big for the Opti. And that fleet is definitely growing quite a bit.
I asked the question because there's talk about foil sailing and, UFOs and some smaller boats, but how many guys get a chance to get to sail at the biggest level, at the highest level with foils? And it's pretty slim in terms of the various categories of sailing. And I guess my last question is, how do we get guys your age and younger, how do we get more kids in boats? Because everything we look at, every number we look at, from U.S. sailing to our own even junior sailing programs, they're shrinking. They're just not growing. And part of that, I'm sure, is the cost of boats and the cost of instruction. But can we make it more fun? Or what would be, if you were designing a program for a brand new yacht club and you were the junior sailing director, what would be the one sort of target idea that you would want to bring to the table? Because you just come through those programs. That's a hard question, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know what they could really change to make anything better. It's just you like it or you don't.
Well, let me ask you this. Do we race more than we should? And should we practice more? Should there be more? I've been an advocate of sort of sandlot sailing. Just let kids go sail and not always have to have a structure involved. Is that something that would bring more folks out?
I think one thing that would bring more people out is maybe have a more diverse group of boats, right? We have Optis, 420s, and lasers. I mean, everywhere else you go, people are sailing skiffs, people are sailing foiling boats. I think it's time for something to be updated and bring in more boats, new boats, and that might draw in some more attention to the sport.
I definitely agree. And like, you go to some place like, Kingston, and you'll look on the water and there's probably almost 50 or more different classes of boats just on the lake at one time. You have kiteboarders, you have 5-6 different kinds of foiling boats, skiffs, every kind of boat you could possibly imagine. And then you come here and we really only have the Opti, the laser, the 420, and then big boats. And there's not really any of the other types of boats. So I think if we could see a lot more of those kinds of sailboats on the lake, that'd be very beneficial.
Last question. I've already said this once, but this is the last question. Talk a little bit about what's coming up, what the expectations are for Rochester. And I know, Ryan, you are going to crew with Bill or with Dougie this weekend, right? Coming up?
The next 2 weeks, yeah.
So what's your hopes?
Well, that's kind of what I'm in the process of thinking about, is how well we're predicting ourselves, or how well we're going to do. And I'm not quite sure yet.
Yeah, I haven't yet to sail in a big 420, like a really big 420 regatta yet. So we'll see how it goes. So first we have North Americans at Rochester, and then straight from there we go to nationals at Brant Beach, and then we come back and me and Ryan are both doing the Port Huron New Mackinac race, and then it's like a week after that we go to Marblehead, Massachusetts, for another regatta.
Well, after you guys get back from nationals, we'll check in with you a little bit just to see how things went. And Bill, I know you've got some stuff coming up with lasers and some of the other races. So when we do the race at Crescent, hopefully we can maybe strap a GoPro or something on your mast to get some footage and see what it looks like up close and personal. Listen, guys, I really appreciate your time, and you guys are exemplary young student athletes, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. And I think you've given, hopefully, given our audience a little bit of insight. So, best of luck, and I really appreciate it. This is cool. I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're talking with DYRA Commodore Tim Prophit. Tim is headed to about ready to go to Chicago here after. We're going to have a whole conversation about lightning. I'm sitting aboard his North American 40 here at Bayview, and we're going to have a conversation with Tim. We're going to flip it over. We're talking with Tim Prophit. Tim, we've talked a lot as sailors with each other about having electrical storms and having electricity, and in this case, lightning hit masts and stuff. But it obviously never it happens to very few of us. It's that golf course. If you hold a 1-iron above your head, there's a chance that you're going to get hit.
What's a 1-iron?
1-iron is a golf club.
I don't golf.
I understand. I was just for those who golf, it'll make
Right.
the analogy will make some sense. Your boat's in the water, and obviously we had some storms here in the last week, and you actually got hit. So I guess talk us through the very first part of what goes through your brain when you find out your boat's hit.
Well, so I was actually not on board. I was up about 300 yards at the Bayview office getting ready to attend to some business there, and it was raining out, and I got out of my car, and a bolt of lightning flashed very close to me, and I started, as I always do, to kind of count down the seconds to see how close it was, between the lightning and the thunder, and I got maybe 1 nanosecond. So it kind of scared the shit out of me because it was pretty close. So I go up to the club, and like 1 minute later, I get a phone call from Paul Lee, who was doing some work on my boat, and as part of that work had just disconnected the ground cable from the starter. And he relayed to me that the boat got hit by lightning. He's like, Timmy, man, your boat got hit by lightning. So I'm talking to Paul. He's obviously not dead. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I got lucky. I just pulled the ground cable off. I wasn't touching anything metal. And there was a huge arc and spark, and it felt like a stick of dynamite went off next to my ear. And he told me later his ears have been ringing for like 2 days. So I hang up the phone with Paul, and the phone rings again, and it's Mike Nampa, who's a member here. And I recognize that. He goes, Tim, I got really bad news for you. I said, let me guess, my boat got hit by lightning. He goes, how'd you know? I go, you're the second call I got it. He goes, yeah, I was driving by. He goes, I saw it happen. There was like, the top of your mast was arcing and sparking. I said, all right. So I hustled my ass down here. So I was happy to find Paul Lee completely unharmed. And Paul's a pretty stoic guy. And he just kind of went back to work. And because the ground cable was disconnected, I couldn't really test anything. So Paul completed his work, and we started firing stuff up, and nothing worked. And I remember when the J120 Naughty Boys was hit by lightning. They were out in the lake when they were hit. They were sailing, and the lightning, as it exited the hull, blew a bunch of holes in it, and the insurance company totaled that boat. And I started to get nervous because I don't want my boat to get totaled. So there was no obvious signs of water coming in the boat. My next door neighbor here, Funtech, they also took a hit, and they lost some instruments. And so, long story short, I had the boat hauled the next day. There really wasn't a sense of urgency because, again, there was no water coming in, but there were exit holes. Curiously, mostly in the keel, where the lead in the keel is bolted to the sump. In the rudder, which has a skeleton that consists of a stainless steel rudder post and 3 stainless tines that come out. And at the aft end of the lowest tine was the biggest hole under the water line that we knew of at the time. And that one was leaking water because the rudder has foam core. Keel's not leaking water because it's all lead. So we put the boat back in the water because I wasn't really ready to take it out, and we had a Thursday night race, and my kid was in town, and I wanted to take her sailing. And so we came back out Friday and did a closer inspection, and the only place on the hull was just forward of the chain place. There's 2 little holes right at the water line, maybe just above the water line, and it turns out that's where the magnetic compass transducer is mounted. And so the lightning picked multiple paths to exit the boat. I get very, very fortunate that there was no major hull damage. The rudder was a little tricky. We had to dry that out, and had to drill some extra holes to drain it out. So, I don't know, it was opened up with several holes for 3 or 4 days. We dried it up, patched it, fitted it up. But what I really want to talk about is the fact that, most of us started, if not all of us, on little boats with no instruments. We can all sail little boats with no instruments. We can probably sail big boats with no instruments. But you know, when you're doing a Mackinac race or even a delivery from here to Chicago, you kind of let you know how fast you're going and what direction the wind's coming from and how hard it's blowing and all that good stuff. So my instruments were blown out, the boat's insured, insurance companies move incredibly slowly, so I really can't rely on those guys to help me out. So through the generosity and the camaraderie of the Detroit sailing community, I've got functional instruments, and it looks like I might have an all helmet that works. That's still in the process of being tested, but it's close. And I want to name a couple guys in particular: Jim Rappeljay, Andrew Moreland, Sammy Barber, and Brian Smith. Those guys all stepped up and found parts in their basements that were thankfully went out into water with the floods, and have allowed me to use them to get me through these races. If it wasn't for those guys, you know, I wouldn't be going to Chicago right now.
Okay, we're talking on Saturday, July 10th, about 5:30. You're leaving at 6 o'clock to go to Chicago.
Right.
The lightning hit when?
Tuesday the 30th? It was Tuesday the 30th?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So-
about right.
Obviously, lightning has different effects on different boats if it hits it directly versus indirectly, and so on and so forth. Is it just the idea that taking it out just to make sure that you knew everything was fine? That's kind of the point.
Well, yeah, and then the other thing, being aware that, you know, I'm not a lightning expert,
Right.
but I'm also aware that Naughty Boys got totaled. And as much as I wanted to do these races, I don't want to endanger my crew or myself.
Right.
And so the insurance company sent their like surveyor adjuster sort of guy, and then I also hired Matt Mormon to do specifically do a thermal imaging scan to you know, ensure that the structural integrity of the hull was still there, and he basically, you know, I don't know the scientific mumbo jumbo, but he said it had a clean bill of health, which is fine with me.
It's an interesting sidebar for the Chicago to Mackinac race, which you're headed to. I mean, here's a boat that just came off the hard from, you know, being tested for lightning. I think that's there's got to be an omen. There's got to be some extra time in there to help you, you know, call it spiritual help, whatever you want to call it.
I'll take it, you know. And like I said, we had crew shirts in the work, and we had to call them up and change a little bit. So this is the official vernissage of the Fast Tango 2021 season crew shirt, where the dancers are getting zapped.
Okay.
And then we turn around, and then the Fast Tango itself is getting
Explain the ink. You explained ink earlier, but
Oh yeah, so the black ink, and we've also done darker t-shirts with silver ink, is actually the retroreflective material. I don't know if it'll come up here, but if you're at night and someone's shining a flashlight, this will reflect, which is good if you're in the water seeking rescue, bad if the cops are chasing you.
you don't expect the cops to be chasing you in Chicago, do you?
Oh God, no. Of course not. I'm a model citizen.
You know, I know Bayview Mackinac is an important race. You're a member at Bayview. Of the two races, who do you think has the better reputation? And that's not necessarily the better reputation, but
Well,
is it 1 and 1A or is it 1 and 1 or 1 and 2?
It's this and that. It's either or both. I mean, you know, the Chicago race is probably considered to be a more prestigious race because it starts out of Chicago, which is a major city. Our race starts out of Port Huron, which is not a major city. And so by virtue of that fact, they tend to have always had more boats participate. They are two completely different races.
Yeah.
I enjoy both of them. And last year when Chicago canceled their race, whereas we did not, you know, while feeling fortunate enough to sail our Mackinac race, I miss Chicago. And you know, you go through all this work to get the boat ready, and I'm fortunate enough that I can take the time to do both races because it's like Mackinac season. One complements the other. The two clubs, you know, they're selling the same thing, sailboat racing, and so they do a lot of cooperation on, you know, common elements of the race. You know, a lot of the safety stuff is the same. I think they share some of the assets up on the island, and they alternate who's first every year so that the portion of boats that do like to do both races over a 2-year period to share the travel burden.
A couple weeks ago, I had a chance to interview Chris Shepler, who is a former America's Cup guy and obviously owns the boats. I have a connection to Chris because we were both ski racing coaches for years, and I didn't even know him until the last year that he was even a sailor. But he says he loves to deal with the Bayview guys rather than Chicago guys because they're a lot less snooty. I thought that was an interesting statement because it's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a different. I think there's a slightly different sailing culture. You know, over the years, I mean, I don't know, this would be my 26th Chicago. And back in the old days, it always felt like it was, the race committee against everybody, and the race committee against the Detroit guys. And they've gotten a lot better. They really have. They appreciate the fact that we come over, and I've attended. Like, I just went to their Island Goat, with their version of the old goat induction ceremony, and it was really nice. I met some cool people. I met people who raced on boats whose boat names I recognized. I didn't know them, so it was, it's gotten a lot better.
We had a chance last week to introduce the race director from the Queen City or Queens Cup, as well as the guy who was the helmsman for the Fox boat, and it was really cool talking to them. It was you really find out that there's a love of sailing and a love of racing, and it's sort of the first leg of a variety of pretty large races. On this boat, a lot of older electronic parts that got fried. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the boats around here, when the previous owner put them on there, so I mean, they were pretty new when I got the boat. I've had the boat for 10 years, but I just upgraded 3 of the displays from like the most current ones. They were used, but they were in mint shape, and they were not cheap. This stuff's all ridiculously expensive. But they don't make any of this stuff anymore. So I don't know what the insurance company's going to say. They've got a quote for a new B&G system, which is, I think, appropriate, but who knows what they think.
Now, how long does it take you to get to Chicago from here?
Well, if it's all goes well and it's a perfect delivery, 3 days, 22 hours.
Okay, that'll be fun. And straight through?
We stopped for fuel a couple times. Maybe hit a shower if we can't stand ourselves. But this is a delivery. I'm all about the destination and less about the journey. We will, of course, enjoy the journey as much as we can, but it's I'm not going to sail at 5 knots when I can motor sail at 7.
Well, hopefully after the race we get a chance to talk to you for a couple seconds and just what the experience was,
yeah.
and we're going to do the same thing with some of the winners and some of the folks over there.
Well, I seriously hope I fall into that category.
Last question.
Yeah.
If your boat's hit with lightning, what would you, having gone through the process, what's the first thing you would tell somebody who maybe doesn't have the experience that you just had?
If you fire up something and it works, don't believe it's going to work. I had several things that worked that subsequently failed. I would strongly, even though we got lucky and Funtech got lucky, Funtech has similar lightning exit pinholes in the keel and the rudder as we do, nothing in the hull, but everyone's different, My masthead whip antenna got vaporized. That's not it. I borrowed that one from Andrew Moreland. His wind one got vaporized. Mine was heavily damaged, but it wasn't vaporized. And some of the boats along here, and there's a theory that there was proximity lighting or something hit the dock because a lot of the like the shore power cords had burn marks on them. Okay, and so did that happen when lightning actually in this boat, or did it come from the shore power here? I don't. That breaker didn't trip, but I've got a breaker box in the boat, and both the main and the port and starboard breakers tripped. So
who knows?
But who knows? So I would say have everything checked out. The fact that my ground cable was disconnected was good because, hang on, I'm gonna keep everything toughed out. The fact that my ground cable was disconnected was good because it didn't damage my batteries. It didn't damage my hardwire battery charger. It didn't damage the alternator. Because we were going on a delivery and I really want my batteries to remain charged, I did remove the alternator and I took it to Finish Line, which is a starter and alternator place on 9 Mile between Gratiot and Hayes or something like that. Great guys, put it on the bench. They also rebuilt my starter last year and they do great work. So they pronounced my alternator healthy, but I would definitely have the alternator checked out. I would count on pretty much every wire that's connected, anything that's connected to a circuit board. Every single circuit board in this boat was fried, all right? My electronic compass transducer looked like a bomb went off inside of it. There's a circuit board in the Nexus server, all right, and that was burnt, all right. When I turned my stereo back on, it started smoking and like flames and shit like that. So luckily I had wire snips and I just cut the power and got rid of it.
And maybe one of the best things to do is find an insurance company that pays off faster. You see all these TV commercials with you're in good hands.
Right.
And apparently, the good hands aren't as fast as you'd like them to be.
You know, they have to go through their process, and that's fine. You know, I'd rather take the time
Right.
and get it done right,
Sure.
than have somebody say, "Here's a check," and you cash it, then you find out stuff. You know, with the electrical stuff, and this is not things I've necessarily learned firsthand through this experience, but through other people, you know, insurance people, surveyors. They say the electrical stuff is the worst because it might look like it works and then it fails. All right. So like I've already had one VHF handheld failed. You know, I've got several handheld GPSs, but the ship GPS, you know, is it going to work? Is it going to fail? I don't know.
Well, that's good. Well, listen, I hope you have a very safe trip
Thank you.
and the best of luck, and hopefully you come back with some trophies or flags or whatever it is that you want to come back with.
All of it. Yeah, I want to bump 50.
Appreciate the time.
There you go.
Thanks
All
very
right.
much.